Shirley. I'll just switch it on. And it's all yours.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time. We are having our full meeting of the Board of Advisors of the Universities at Shady Grove, and it's wonderful to be with all of you. We're going to focus today on the future, having just unveiled our strategic plan, and really think about our work as the board in supporting that. But we're going to start with some brief updates. I'm looking around. There's no one for whom this is a first meeting. Am I correct? That seems right. So if anybody has any important news they'd like to share, I'll pause. I know that we are going to welcome our new president of Montgomery College, I believe. Is it Monday, Mike and Mike?
It is. He's in town. He moved his family down last week, and he's been working at the college this week, just trying to get up to speed, but he starts officially on Monday, the 28th.
It's very exciting.
Dr. Jermaine Williams.
Terrific. Well, so we have now the leaders of our educational ecosystem are all in place. The Board of Education has selected Dr. Monifa McKnight, who's the interim superintendent, to be the permanent superintendent. Dr. Williams is now here. And of course, Anne is now the senior leader in the Montgomery County educational ecosystem. With that, Anne, let me turn it to you for your executive director update.
Thank you so much, Shirley. I am very excited and happy for Montgomery College and their new leadership with Dr. Jermaine Williams. I'm excited to meet him in person and welcome him. Congratulations to Mike for a great search and a great outcome. I also want to acknowledge the incredible leadership of Dr. Charlene Dukes in the interim. She's a phenomenal individual, has been serving on our board as well. And I've just enjoyed working with her tremendously and learning from her. And also I want to congratulate Dr. Monifa McKnight for her appointment now as superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools. So very, very exciting. I also want to acknowledge we had Student Advocacy Day, and that was Shirley and PJ represented Shady Grove along with Zuhal, our student representative here on the board, and just a fantastic presentation and representation of USG. So thank you all for that. We had other students who joined as well. And so I'm very grateful to all of you for that. I wasn't able to be there that day. I had the opportunity to present our strategic plan to the Board of Regents and did that, but very grateful to those who represented us that day. I just want to give a brief update on FY23 and where we are. A big shout out and major thanks to Ellen Herbst, who has been right in the center of getting a 100% restoration of not only our budget, but the system budget. So Ellen, thank you so much for your leadership and efforts there. And of course, thank you to the Chancellor for his tremendous advocacy and work to make that happen. So 100% restoration of our budget is really good news. We had all kinds of scenarios that we were planning for, including, even if there had been a 45% restoration, that would have still meant a cut for us because the system had generously allowed us to keep some of the funds that were supposed to be swept from our budget as one-time funds last year. So we were looking at some pretty tough scenarios, but with the 100% restoration, we do have some additional base budget funding now to work with as we move forward to implement USG 2.0. We also were asked to put in a proposal to the Montgomery County delegation for some one-time funds that we have treated as an opportunity to pilot and launch some components of the strategic plan. We don't know yet if that will be funded or if portions of it will be funded, but we are waiting eagerly to find out about that. We work closely with Ellen and the Chancellor and Joe Bogman on that in order to make sure we were in line and thinking together in terms of what the systems plans were as well. So we're excited and eager to find out what happens with the one-time funding. The other area that we are working on for possible funding is we've been engaged with the county and with our partners on educational ecosystem work. And so really taking our partnerships to the next level where we start building pathways together, really focusing on employer engagement at a higher and deeper level, taking some of our existing work to the next level with ACEs and other partnerships, focusing on the career readiness initiative that is underway and that is central to our strategic plan as well, and really focus on building data, a data component into all that we do, a shared data component. We made some really good progress with Montgomery College and MCPS and USG around ACEs. We made an agreement to start working on building a shared database for ACEs. This is a big step forward for all of us. USG was able to put forward some one-time funds to help move that along, and we're very excited about that particular initiative so we can start doing some collective work and data work. We also were asked by Councilmember Craig Rice and by Councilmember Hans Riemer to develop a proposal for a data institute, which would really be focused on helping all of us plan for pathways together. And that is still in early stages of conversation and discussion. Of course, MC is in a major transition right now in leadership, and MCPS has also just gone through a leadership transition as well. And so there's a lot of work to do on that, but we are anticipating submitting that proposal for consideration and it being funded at maybe an initial level to fund 1 or 2 staff members to start working collaboratively with our partners. So we'll see where that goes. But I think that this is an opportunity where we can lead some of the collaborative countywide work that is essential in order to move forward with not only USG 2.0, but with the educational ecosystem. So we're excited about that, and we'll see where that goes. And those are my primary advocacy updates, Shirley. I will note that we have upcoming on March 7th, a very special event that our team here at Shady Grove has been working hard on. This is a tribute to President Freeman Hrabowski on his 30-year anniversary and retirement as the president of. Nancy, I'm sorry, I just saw your hand up. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something about the fiscal side of things? Yeah, go ahead.
No, actually, I just had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
The ACEs, is there some place where we could see how you see that rolling out?
I can share with you the proposal that we've developed for the shared database work and for the next steps in ACEs. Let me work with Robin to pull something together that we can share with you on that. Absolutely. It's really right now, ACEs is of course, there's all kinds of assessments of ACEs right. And things, but I'm talking about the next steps that we're doing. Is that right. What you want to focus yes. on? Right. So one of the biggest challenges we have with ACEs is just being able to assess what's happening to students across the pathway and in order to support them. And so this effort is to work with WestStat to collaboratively build a shared database so that we can get some consensus on what data goes into it, what we have, and then also hopefully to take some first steps in that assessment and evaluation process as well. But I'm happy, Nancy, to share with you that proposal that we have to do.
I assume that maybe if you could, if Shirley, if it went to Shirley and she, this could be a really significant model for an on-the-ground rollout of how you can try to do something like this, that, as you know, many other systems are talking about, but haven't made much progress on either.
I agree. Yeah,
I do agree, Nancy. The moment, ACES has had a really wonderful start, but in the spirit of everything in the strategic plan about really being student-centered, really making the pathway seamless, really being sure that we are tracking all the numbers that we can, because we know that the potential in the student body is there and getting them all the way through. This is an important investment, I think, in really getting past some of the challenges, but I agree with you. And I know the Student Success Committee has definitely done a little bit of a deeper dive. So maybe what we will do, I can work with the co-chairs of that committee to think about how we bring a presentation to the full board at some point when we're ready.
That's a great suggestion, Shirley. That's a good way to do it. I also note the Career Readiness Initiative has been piloted in ACES as well. So there's, ACES has been a great model to try and, bring a number of things that are pathway related to fruition. So it's great. Thank you, Nancy. My apologies for not seeing your hand earlier. So on the President Hrabowski event, this will be a wonderful occasion to honor and recognize President Hrabowski's accomplishments, not only as an incredible transformative president of UMBC, but also his leadership in equity, educational equity, in STEM, in creating opportunities for underrepresented students in a massive, incredible way. And so this will be a tribute to him. There will be a number of guest speakers. Chancellor Perman will be speaking. We will have comments from, of course, Ike Leggett will be speaking, and a number of other representatives who have done have provided some videos that will be compiled together as well as for this. I'm going to be interviewing President Hrabowski as a roundtable conversation, highlighting his leadership and his role here at Shady Grove as well. And there will be also, following that, a lovely opportunity for all of the programs at UMBC to be featured out in the atrium, and a chance for President Hrabowski to meet with all the faculty and the students across USG, but especially from UMBC as well. So Steve is going to put a link to that event. If you have not registered, I encourage you all to do that, and hope that you can all join us. It's going to be an in-person event. It will also be streamed, so there's a way to see it as well virtually. And Shirley, those are my updates. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them, but I'll stop there.
Terrific. Any questions? Okay, you should all have received the invitation to the event by paperless post, but please, if you didn't or haven't had a chance to sign up, follow the link in the chat. Okay, terrific. I'm going to move us along on the agenda. So many of us had an opportunity to participate in some fashion in the rollout of the strategic plan, whether it was the sneak peek or the official public rollout or the executive committee. So we are not today going to do a deep dive into the strategic plan, but what I do want to do today is to have Anne do a very high level sort of just setting the context so that we can then look at our Board of Advisors strategic plan, which was an effort that was led when Mike was chairing the board, and we completed the strategic plan going back to look at the year in 2018. And to now think about the work that we set out for ourselves and how it aligns and where we might need to tweak in order for us as the board to really step into our role and responsibilities to support USG's growth now that there's the official USG plan. So we're going to take a little time to do that crosswalk at a really high level. You have access to the materials. We're going to just take you through some quick set of slides, but then open it to conversations. And then that will be followed by some updates from the committees, which have already begun to sort of think through what our future work might look like. So any questions before we dive in? Okay, Anne, I'm going to turn it to you first, and then I will follow.
Thank you, Shirley. I'm going to share just a very, very quick high-level synopsis of the plan. It takes me about 4 minutes. And then my main focus is going to be on next steps, as Shirley said, and how, again, at a high level, how we're thinking about next steps. So I will share my screen for just a moment for this first part. This slide captures the 4 new strategic imperatives that are central to USG's strategic plan moving forward. What doesn't change at USG is that we continue to be a champion for students, especially for non-traditional students, underrepresented in higher education, really creating more and more opportunities for accessible, affordable higher education. And our deep commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion throughout USG with our partners and in service to our students will remain foundational, and we'll continue to invest in this area as well. What will change as we move forward with USG 2.0, the first thing that will change, we're highlighting it as the promise, where we have traditionally been focused on enrollments and on completion of degrees. We will extend that focus to a promise, at least holding ourselves accountable to work as hard as we can to ensure that the pathway continues and that students have access to meaningful employment upon graduation. That is a big commitment. That is hard to do. We probably won't be as good at it as we'd like to be starting out, but I think it's something we all have to commit to. It's clear that students who are leaving higher education over the pandemic, over the last several years, are doing so because they're making a calculation about the worth of the investment and what comes after it. And we need to tackle that head on. The second thing that will change is that we will go from historically where we have focused on bringing specifically degree programs and focusing on bringing degree programs to USG. We're going to be focusing on building pathways that are populated with degree programs, and both undergrad and graduate, as well as partnerships that reach down into K through 12 and of course into community colleges in partnership, but also what happens after graduation and in between, and credentialing and micro-credentialing and stackable credentials. So our focus is going to shift to pathways and the partnerships to build those pathways. The third thing that will change, we have traditionally provided traditional student services, and now we are going to be sharpening our focus on career competencies and career readiness. We will, of course, continue to support students through their efforts in making sure that they have the support that they need, but we're going to do it in a framework of career readiness. Again, part of the promise that we are really focused on the value add. Our partners also provide traditional student services, so where can we really add value for our students in preparation for the best careers that they can have? And this is something that we are doing in strong partnership with MCPS and MC as well. A lot of work went into building a career readiness focus and commitment with all of our partners. Fiscal sustainability is the final area. Our original model here at Shady Grove has not necessarily grown with us. And frankly, it has encouraged a real estate model mindset here, where our program and partners come and deliver their programs here and pay for classroom space, pay for office space. We want to shift that with our fiscal model. We want to build a fiscal model that grows with us. We want to build a fiscal model that is based upon a return on investment. And we want to build a fiscal model that fosters collaboration and innovation across all of our university system partners here at Shady Grove. So those are the four imperatives that will shift. Those are the areas that you'll see changes as USG 2.0 moves forward. In terms of immediate next steps, looking across the next year, we are going to be taking a model, an approach that focuses on task forces and action teams over the next year. And there are big areas that we need to focus on first that are foundational to USG 2.0. They involve our partnerships, they involve how we engage with our partners, they involve where we put our attention. And so there's four things that I'm going to highlight as our next steps. And it's important to keep in mind that the working groups that many of you served on highlighted these areas. A lot of these things that we're going to be digging into are exactly where the work groups have directed us as part of the strategic plan as well. So we're going to start off with some task force areas for framing purposes, engagement purposes, consensus building purposes, and how we move forward. And then action teams that will be more deeply embedded within USG for how we go about implementing some of these as well. So the first area that we are going to focus on is in student services. And this transition to career readiness framework requires a lot of collaboration with our partners to ensure that everyone is comfortable with the transition, everyone can see how the services will be transitioned into a new framework, and where we may have challenges, where we still may have services that don't fit within that framework, but we still need to provide them, we figure out how we're going to do that. So that Student Services Task Force will represent a number of USG staff, but will also represent a lot of our partners, both on the home campuses and on the USG campus. So that Student Services Task Force is a first big move. Of course, Steve and Dan, getting you engaged in this effort as well is going to be very important with the Student Success Committee. Another area that we are going to be focusing on probably late spring, we're looking at May or so, will be a task force that we were going to put together that we view as county-wide. So in addition to our university partners and our Montgomery County partners, creating a task force that will look at the future student and an aspirational task force effort to say, what does a pathway look like that centers the student experience, especially students that we serve here at Shady Grove. And what are the milestones in these pathways? What are the services needed in these pathways? How should we, how does communication flow in these pathways? So it will be an effort to think holistically as a county around pathways and as a university system around pathways and what that means. And so that is something that we will be working towards with everyone to set the task force and to bring everyone together, like I said, probably at the end of the semester. Another area that we are going to be working on, I'm just going to look at my notes here, is of course the fiscal model. And we've already begun work on the fiscal model with the Financial Resources Committee. We have our interim CFO, John Farley, and also Rick Stasloff, who is a consultant who has years of work here in Maryland, but across higher education in the fiscal model space. The first work there is going to be a cost study where we are actually trying to estimate what it costs Shady Grove to deliver services that we provide. And of course, along with that, doing some estimating and pulling together the models of our partners for what it costs to deliver programs here as well. And we're also going to be working through with that cost study as a basis for thinking about return on investment. We're also going to do some experimenting, which I'll mention in a moment, around some pathway work around the areas of, for example, educating teachers and preparing teachers in the life sciences, and using those pilots to really understand where the cost pressures are, where the growth opportunities are, where the fiscal model needs to flex and grow with us. So we'll be doing a lot of work around the fiscal model over this year as well. And then the final area, not the final, one more area that I'll highlight is around academic planning for pathways. You all have heard me talk about the need to do a better job of how we plan, how we identify areas of need, how we respond collectively to those areas of needs, create opportunities for all of our academic partners to fill in those areas of needs across a pathway. But that requires planning, that requires collaboration, that requires good data in order to do that. And so part of this institute that I mentioned early on that we are proposing to the county council, that institute could play a role in some of this academic planning for pathways. And so we do want to do a piloted effort in this probably next fall, focusing perhaps on either the life sciences or teaching, bringing together, scoping down into a very specific area, bringing all of our partners together and the data together to do some initial work in that kind of collective academic planning. The other area I'll mention is around employer engagement. This is huge, and employer engagement is referenced throughout the plan. And thinking holistically, I'm not sure yet how we dig into this, but it is central. It is huge. It's one of the major recommendations coming out of the Activating the Flywheel group as well. And so we've got some thinking to do as a board about that, and some thinking to do, with our partners about that. But that is top of mind, and we are moving to, thinking about how we activate that effort as well. All of this, we're hopeful for some resources from the state legislature for one-time funds that we can activate some of these efforts, show some proof of concept, start to build some capacity, and be able to, for FY24, be able to respond with the components of a new fiscal model to propose, to be able to respond with some proof of concept of some pathway efforts, and hopefully with a lot of support from our partners and of course from our board of advisors and from the system, to be able to go to the state legislature with a proposal for how we move forward in FY24 as well. So that's my update on next steps, Shirley.
Thank you, Anne. Let me pause there. Did that for questions, comments, reflections before we move on? You can use the raise the hand feature. And Kaiser?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, I don't have great connection. I don't have great connection when I drive by the NSA. Anyway, so let me try to quickly say, what do we have all the pieces we need to do the things that were mentioned? Do we have the staff to do the work, and do we have the staff buy-in for all those things?
Thank you, Anne. We have a lot of staff buy-in. I will say staff is, this is a lot of change for our team. It's a lot of change for our team. And so there's a lot of work internally at USG to make sure that people understand where this is going, how they see their jobs changing. But we will need, with some of these one-time funds, Anne, we are going to need some support from both consultants and from either initial hires as C1s who become C2s and possibly permanent employees down the road as well. So we will need some support in doing this. And we've been talking to a number of individuals who can help us provide some consulting services to help get some of these things going, supporting our team in getting these things going. And I think the key in a lot of this is that the task forces are going to be broad in representation and broad across our partners, but the action teams are things that our team within USG are going to be leading and driving, because it means their jobs, their work, and how they go forward. So we're thinking about it that way, but we will need some of the one-time funds and to move some of these things forward. Absolutely. Does that answer your question, Anne?
She was having some trouble with her audio, so we're going to assume yes for now. Otherwise, she will jump back in. Anyone else have any questions or comments before we move along? Oh, Kevin, sorry, didn't see your hand up.
So one of the things that, and again, having been a part of it and thought the process was a good process, and we got to an awful lot of the important things, and your leadership on it was great. I appreciate you and I putting all the work and effort into this. The part that if all of this, I still worry about just the structural issues that are in systems of this size. We are in a big university system, and there are things that we have to make sure stay top of mind as they think about what we're trying to do here and how we all participate together to actually not only have USG achieve its goal in 2.0, but that the University System of Maryland recognizes that it also will change as a result of what we do and how they approach this. I mean, I've kind of taken the Tesla analogy that we're not going to the gas station anymore. And in order for that innovation to truly yield the result that we are looking for, there are different infrastructure pieces that need to be added and changed in order for success to be realized. And I think every time we think about the work that we're doing, we have to recognize there are changes globally in this thing that we're doing that we need to realize and know they can't happen overnight, but that we need to keep our focus on them. And when we see those barriers, we just can't have our shoulders drop. We really do have to address them.
Could I interject for just a second? And I think that from my perspective and evaluating the current board, and its mind thought about a very excellent question that you raised, Kevin. You're correct that without the system involvement and participation, active participation, it'll be very difficult for us to achieve any of these objectives. And I'm reasonably confident that they now have a full understanding. This is why we were so intent in getting the chancellor involved, getting Linda involved, and they spoke, participated. Ellen, for example, has been very much involved and is aware, probably better than anyone, of the issues and concerns, and she's been right on top of all of these things. That there's some work to be done because we have to deal with an entire system. But I think that we're in a very good position now, and I think we can't let up, but we really have to continue to move forward. But you're correct. We can't make these systemic changes without the board's active participation, but from the chancellor and the chairperson and many others, I think that they get the message, and we're going to be on top of it.
Appreciate Kevin and Ike. Jorge?
Hi, my question is along the lines of the comments of Ike, and he's answered some of it. But have you heard of any kind of ideas or comments or reaction from the different partner programs, and how they are responding, how they're receiving this. The second part is whether you've developed some kind of framework for how to engage each one of them so that we build on their kind of in that relationship, but knowing that it's going to be transforming anyway.
Thank you, Jorge. On the reactions of others, there have been a lot of very positive, enthusiastic reactions from people, but in terms of individual reactions, I work closely with Provost Rice at College Park. She's been very supportive and excited about the direction that we're going, and very open to some of the changes and things that this will require along the way. I will say that Ellen Herbst and Joe Bogman have been amazing in their support for this as well, and helping to kind of troubleshoot and problem solve and think ahead as we go along. And the chancellor has been incredibly supportive of and very positive in his reaction and support. Ultimately, this does rest on individual partners deciding to invest in this and individual partners deciding to come along with this. There are some of our smaller partners are very excited and eager to start this work. And I'd say some of our bigger partners are maybe watching and seeing and waiting to see where this goes. But I think this is why the pilots, to your second question, Jorge, this is why the pilots are so important, because the framework for engaging everybody is through these task forces. I will continue my one-on-one conversations and my one-on-one work with everybody, but we really need to get away from individually negotiated MOUs, individually negotiated deals, individually negotiated data agreements. At Shady Grove, one of the reasons why our model is not sustainable is we do everything times 9, and sometimes we do everything times 81 for every single degree program. And it is exhausting. Our staff is amazing, but they can't do that anymore. And there has to be, the plan is setting in place what are the consistent parameters. And so I want to be able to engage with everyone on a level playing field in the task forces, moving together. And that's the approach that we plan to take with broad representation in that sense. But there will always require that kind of continued, of course, conversation with provosts and presidents. And the PEG group will be really important in this as well. We're counting on working with the PEG group, the provost executive group, in order to, especially with the academic planning, to get buy-in and move that forward as well. And the PEG group is representative of our largest partners. So I hope that helps, Jorge.
Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions at this juncture? So I think where the conversation has taken us is exactly right, which is as I just said, and Kevin and Jorge's reinforced, it's going to take the active participation of the Board of Advisors to help move us to reach the goal. We've all committed to each other, in every single meeting of this plan. Putting it together reminded us this is not a plan to be written and put on a shelf, nor was the Board of Advisors strategic plan written to be put on a shelf. And so this is going to be a moment to examine where we have been as a board and think about how we might continue, because I think there's a huge amount of alignment between the USG strategic plan and the Board of Advisor plan, but also where we might grow. And I'm just going to alert the committee chairs. I had intended to sort of talk us through some slides and then bring in committee chairs, but it might be a better conversation if when we look at specific committees, I'll bring the committee chair in. So just heads up that I may call on you a little bit in advance just to keep us all on our toes. So I'm going to just show you a few things that I have thought as I have sat the USG strategic plan right next to the Board of Advisors plan and take you there. And I want to thank the team for help with the slides. Steve, if you could advance us to the next one. So the Board of Advisors mission, which I think still stands very true, to catalyze USG's mission to fuel economic growth for residents in the community by providing pathways to accessible and affordable, high-quality public higher education. We certainly are well positioned with that mission to continue to support the USG mission, which was articulated in the new plan as making sure that we are a place of innovation to plan, build, measure, assess, and strengthen student-centered pathways for affordable and competitive education, career readiness, and student success. Together with our university partners, we play a vital role in advancing workforce and economic development in the region and in the state. So I think that there's a lot of overlap there. And I think that as we look at our mission, we have always, I think, implicitly embraced the student-centered focus, but I think the USG strategic plan does an amazing job of making that front and center. We need to evaluate everything we put together from the experience of the current and, to quote, and future student, and to think about, do these pathways work? Are they actually seamless? Are the students actually getting access to the opportunities they need? And that will be, we will commit to each other to using that lens as we move forward. Steve, can you flip us to the next one? In the Hedgehog vision, the new plan talks about inspiring and leading educational transformation to serve all learners and support a thriving, equitable economy. The Board of Advisors guiding principles here also continue to stand up well, committing ourselves to providing leadership and access to affordable higher education, to helping hold our partners accountable, and accountable partnerships being the foundation, integrating community and work readiness aspirations into the academic program design, and recognizing that our growth is an essential part of the economic development growth in our county, in our region, in our state. And we collectively, as the board, also have adopted our equity statement, which aligns really well with the equity commitment in the USG strategic plan. So I just wanted to call that out. As I think about the guiding principles, as I look at the commitment to work readiness aspirations, I would say we're committing now to more than just aspirations. This is where we really are looking at holding ourselves accountable for direct and measurable competency development for our students, and also ensuring that they have the experience that they need to be competitive when they leave us. Steve, next slide. So looking at the specific committees, I wanted to sort of share the current focus of the Student Success Committee. We wrote it as enhancing the ability of students to complete their degrees in a timely manner and secure employment. Very much still our commitment. I would say the forward focus that lines up with one of the strategic imperatives that Anne shared with us is really having the focus on career-ready students. So in the new plan, there's a call for the board to help develop the infrastructure for an equity-centered, learner experience centered on career competencies, experiential learning, and cutting-edge mentorship. When we think about the flywheel and how we're going to help make sure that the momentum works, helping to enhance the competitiveness of career-ready graduates for opportunities in high-demand areas may be a way that we have a way in here. And Steve, can we put these slides down for a minute and then come back to them? I do want to share, before I reach out to the Student Success Committee co-chairs, when we did at our last Board of Advisor meeting, many of you completed a survey for us about how you could help connect USG in your professional world and what it would take. And very interestingly, one of the issues that emerged in terms of students' ability to take advantage of some of those connections was that often when students leave us at the end, when they are applying for opportunities, even when the board engages directly or with partners to make opportunities available, our students often feel that they lack the experience they need to apply for the jobs out there. And that's a very powerful statement for us as a board of advisors to think about, how we embrace the challenge of creating experience for our students. We've talked in the past about the need to invest and create a stipend fund for internships, because often our students don't have the financial ability to take unpaid internships, which is one way that students garner experience. But conversations about how does that experience get built into their time in USG? How does that get built into the pathway? What kinds of experiences can we help our students market through the competencies that they're developing? So this is really a moment to dig in. I see a question from Larry before I invite Stephen or Dan to talk about their committee. Larry?
No, I had it answered. I was making some notes, so I apologize. I am fine.
I love that you're paying attention and taking notes. No need to apologize. Steve or Dan, did you want to share a little bit about committee work and also any thoughts that you might have about the forward-looking committee?
I'll start. I can't see Dan at the moment, but we're invite Dan in a second to jump in, but we are excited that much of the work to come through as a result of the strategic plan will come through the Student Success Committee. And the areas you all mentioned are ones that we are already focused on, and with more effort and more hopefully answers to come in the near future. Shirley, do you want me to talk about USG
Sure.
Connect? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. As we've discussed before, we have launched a pilot program called USG Connects, which is a career consulting program born out of the fact that while we have a terrific mentorship program for Kendall scholars, it is very limited in the number of students we reach and in the number of mentors we have. And this is sort of a next level way of reaching students with not as much engagement with the students, but hopefully reaching many more students. And we have recruited 15 career consultants, many of whom are board members, and to spend at least an hour or two with at least one student and doing things like potentially mock interviews, informational interviews, helping them just with general career guidance, potentially looking at resumes. Again, this is born of the fact that so many of these students do not have the guidance that many of us had the advantage of. It's a small commitment, a relatively small commitment, nowhere near as large as being a mentor. And we're also hoping, to be honest, that many of the consultants will get so engaged and so excited about this that they will go on to become mentors. So far, we have 9 students who have signed up, and this is just getting going. So don't be discouraged or put off by that relatively small number. This is a pilot program. Robin and her team are doing a terrific job of getting this going with everything else that's going on. And so we're seeing momentum. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 students just sign up in the last few days. Again, this is a pilot program. Robin and her team will be doing an evaluation of this after this semester. And we're very excited about where this can go and what this can become. Dan, did you want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing I would add is that for those that may be a little concerned or not used to doing such a thing, the team has actually put together an orientation of the program and what's expected, which is available online to go view. So I think we've tried to make it as easy as possible for everybody to be involved, and would certainly like those of you that maybe have not signed up yet to do so. As Steve said, there's only 9 students that have signed up, but we just opened it up. So I would expect there will be many more, and the more people we have engaged in the program, then the more we're able to meet all of those students' needs. So it is not a big commitment, 1 to 2 hours, as Steve said. So hopefully we can get as many of you as possible to be part of that. Thank you.
Dan and I are about to sit down and split up duties of contacting some more potential career consultants. So those of you who have not signed up, you may be hearing from us. We are looking at very specific areas in the pilot program where we don't have consultants, where we think there will be a need and interest among students in terms of professional experience and expertise. Many of you will be here from us in the near future. And we have a question in the chat is, how is this being advertised to students? Robin, do you want to jump in and are you still on and talk about this?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just starting to type the response to Francisco. Good question. We are putting it out on all of our traditional channels, social media, website, our USG Weekly, and really the best connection to students is through the coaching sessions. So our coaches are really, as they're meeting with students, are making those connections and informing students that way. So that's how we're getting the word out already. Just a lot of excitement about the program from students. So I expect that number will continue to grow.
And Francisco, we'd love for you to also push it out in your networks, because I think that this is a wonderful opportunity. And Kaiser, you have a question.
I do. Thank you, Shirley. I like what I heard in terms of the one-on-one coaching. I think I signed up for that. I like what I heard about some of the other pieces of helping these students, but it seems like part of it is just a function of lacking confidence, that they don't realize that they are career ready. And so, I mean, it's more than a pep rally, but it feels like that needs to be part of the communication with a broader set of students, and recognizing that they really are career ready. So I just wanted to put that out there and see if there's any way to do that through whatever career center and other things that you send out to the students.
So I thought that's a really interesting comment to actually think about the online orientation for the career consultants, to think about reinforcing this point that many students do sort of self-censor. They assume that they haven't had relevant experience when in fact in their life experience or in other things they've done, they probably do. And that would be a wonderful thing to emphasize. Let me pause before I get to Kevin's question, if anybody wants to comment.
Shirley, can I just jump in? I think for those of, many of us on the board who regularly mentor scholarship students, reinforcing their confidence is one of the big things that we do. And I think that Anne's point is a great one and needs to be built into this and into the orientation.
Kevin?
So to Anne's question, she hits a very important point. Just my experience with college tracks and having watched it grow, what you're dealing with are students whose interaction with professionals have only pretty much been through instructors. So those who are going to engage with those students really should recognize this may be one of the few opportunities they really had to speak to a professional. So that's important, I think. So I appreciate Anne's comment.
And I think to Anne's point that the message needs to go out more globally. So this isn't just relying on the one-on-one interactions, but really thinking about how we address that. We talk about the non-traditional student, but in one of the ways in which our students may be non-traditional, or maybe this is more common than we realize, but it is in that sense of not being sure that they have what it takes, that they are ready, that they can build on life experiences that they have. And so definitely want to, as the board, help what our staff is already doing. And with that, I'll let Robin into the conversation.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce, and what you said is exactly right on. We talk to students all the time who will come and say, my resume is not strong. And then when you get to talking to them, you see all of the life experiences that they've had. They're like, well, I worked at McDonald's or Target, and we show them how significant those experiences have been. And by the end, they have this really wonderful resume. The other thing, though, is, we do see a lot of students coming in lacking confidence. And that's why we've tried to build this support structure that allows them multiple opportunities to do this. Clubs, organizations, peer networking, peer tutoring, engagement with businesses, all of these things along the pathway that they do help to build their confidence and get them a little bit closer to feeling ready to launch. And that one of the students upon graduation said, Shady Grove is the place that allowed me to be the kind of student I always dreamed I could be, because we give them those opportunities to put themselves out there and step out of their comfort zone.
Appreciate that, Robin. It's an important message for us to hold on to. And I We're going to talk at the end about our upcoming Thought Leadership Symposium on trying to encourage more women and students of color into STEM. Important to keep this point with us as well. Just how do you feel about yourself as somebody who's ready and able to move in those paths? I'm going to keep us moving forward. Steve, if I could ask you for the next committee slide. Okay, next one after student success. So community voice, we currently have the community voice set up to serve as representatives of the community who communicate academic, professional, and economic needs and serve as ambassadors on behalf of USG. In looking at the strategic plan and thinking about where community voice might fit in the future, both the pathways to workforce, one of the strategic imperatives, but also the longer term connection to thinking about how USG will appear in community wealth building are both areas where this committee might take on different and new responsibilities. In the strategic plan, it talks about the board helping to create a partnering framework with regional employers to build the pathways that feed workforce needs. But also to support entrepreneurship collaborations and leverage partnerships in academic, business, and government sectors towards the community wealth building activities. Obviously, continuing to advocate for investment in USG, as we said, and that's something that will connect with our Financial Resources Committee. So looking on the flywheel, there's both the partnering to build pathways that generate opportunity, but also building community wealth, expanding partnerships, driving reinvestment, and growing USG's reputation. So this, the Community Voice Committee, can you take down the slide for me, Steve, has always been a little bit schizophrenic because we've had a little bit of a clearer focus on the advocacy in Annapolis, and then a little bit more of an evolving focus on our connection to the community. This is an area we're going to really need to sort of think about going forward. I had not asked the committee chairs. We've not convened this committee during the process of developing the strategic plan, specifically for the purpose of being able to think through how we present and how we continue to do the work. We've still continued to support the advocacy and still continue to think about the community, but those are areas where I really think we are going to need to take time as a board to really think through our connections, the really helping to develop these pathways, really making those. I believe we were in one of the committees, it might have actually been the Student Success Committee meeting, where there was a conversation about moving from being ambassadors to being connectors. And actually that language about being connectors lives in our Board of Advisors strategic plan. And it really is that active sense. And that's part of the survey that we asked you to do at the last meeting. And I've been following up with those of you who completed that survey. We are really able, I think, through our networks and through the connections and associations we have, to help strengthen and build those connections, which are going to be really critical for the heightened career readiness focus going forward. So I'm just going to pause there. I'm not going to force the committee chairs in specifically to lead, but I'll open it up for any thoughts or comments, but thinking about how that role might evolve as we continue to support the implementation of the strategic plan. Okay, we'll continue moving and we'll come back then. Steve, if you could put up the next slide for me. And moving on to the next one.
Sorry, I'm trying to move it along.
That's okay.
Every time you share it, it seems to pause.
Oh, okay. Well, that's useful feedback. Maybe we'll go through a few before we come back then.
Can't seem to get it. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll keep trying here.
Okay, I appreciate that. Give us 1 second on the technology, and if not, we can take it down and come back to it. Pull up my notes. So one more try.
For some reason, it is just stuck. I'm going to keep trying. I apologize. You can talk from your notes and I'll keep trying to get it advanced.
Okay, totally appreciate that. I will pull up my notes. And while I'm doing that, what I wanted to share with folks is that I'm encouraging us as the board to really think about how we stay very actively engaged with the implementation of the strategic plan. And for us, it is, as Steve and Dan were talking about wanting to reach out to everyone around the Career Connects, we're also going to continue to reach out. And I encourage you to also be thinking about how you would like to bring your networks and experiences into the work. Financial Resources Committee, thank you, Steve. So here in our strategic plan, we had focused on leveraging the Board of Advisors to advise the system and USG so that USG is financially secure to operate and grow. Our forward focus, perhaps one of the most critical strategic imperatives, is to help develop a diversified, scalable, and sustainable fiscal model. We've always known that we needed to drive here. In part, we've needed the experience to understand what that model would need to look like, given the work that we do. As we've now looked at forward, the work group talked about defining and studying USG's return on investment and changing the business model, continuing to advocate for investment in USG. And on the flywheel, the focus on measuring and assessing the impact of pathways on enrollment, student success, workforce, and economic development fits into this vision of return on investment. How do we as USG make clear why this is a good investment, why our students are a good investment, why this is an investment in our economic well-being? So Steve, at the risk of not being able to come back, I am going to take this slide down so that I can invite our Financial Resources Committee co-chairs. I'll start with Mike Priddy to talk a little bit about the committee work.
So just as a nice lead in, I had my first information interview yesterday with Jancy Suresh and had a phenomenal meeting with her, and it ended up really well. I think she might come in and do an intern for us. So it was a really good opportunity. She's a social worker, baccalaureate pursuit from UMB. Anyway, it was a really great experience for me, and I'm glad that I had that opportunity to do that. So I'm just going to go through a couple notes. We had a finance meeting last week. I wanted to thank our financial committee members. My co-chair is Bob Youngentop. Other committee members include Ike Leggett, Ann Kaiser, PJ Hogan, Nancy Kopp, Lily Z, Ellen Herbst, Shirley Brandman, Ann Kadamian, PJ Hogan, Dusty Rode, and Michael Knapp. And we had a really robust conversation regarding options that would meet all of the needs of our key stakeholders. And that was the first topic of our discussion, which included students, Montgomery College, University of Maryland system, Montgomery County in general, and employers. And one thing that's so exciting about our financial model is we believe this innovative model is important not only for USG, but we feel it's also very important for the system as well. And we've had outside and inside reference that these are some things that we think would be helpful, not just to USG, but to our partners in the pathway. So some of the big innovative ideas that came from our fiscal model, which I'll just give you a few of them. We don't have a demand problem, we have a supply problem. We need to have a better autonomy in the acquisition of degree programs, which are needed in Montgomery County in the system, if the system is unable to support these. We must focus on both traditional and non-traditional students. We must start looking for the opportunity to work with students early in their interest in higher education, including working from middle school and high school development to help educate.
Good morning, guys. How are you guys doing this morning?
Craig, can you mute for us?
About the supplemental budget.
Great, thanks. Go ahead, Mike.
So, we need to find ways to continue with that. A few more. We need to find ways to simplify the student process in the pathway, working with Montgomery College and Montgomery County Public Schools, including potentially a dual enrollment application. We have existing studies and workforce development needs. Teachers, for example, the shortage of teachers in Montgomery County, how can we start with them in high school to start understanding that this is a really great degree for them to pursue because there's so many opportunities. And then lastly, we need to consider other resources for funding, including other education partners if the system is unable to support a program that we need. And, how do these new programs reflect our workforce needs? All of these thoughts kind of led into our interest in wanting to create a return on investment for, how can we bring these programs online? How can they pay for themselves? How do we show the benefit? And how do we include key stakeholders in what we need to do? And so, I want to tell you, I felt it was a great meeting, and, we're looking forward to continuing to bring these messages together. And I just wanted to thank my committee members. I'll give our committee members just a minute or two if anybody wants to add anything to what I may have missed. Okay, so thank you for the time, Shirley. Back to you.
Thanks. I think the strategic plan work group and focusing on the ROI, I think, was really looking at this idea that has come up in today's conversation about the need to ensure sustainable continued investment in USG, right? As we move away from, as Anne talked about, the model of just sort of paying for the real estate, the concept that this is a worthwhile investment, both in terms of creating the opportunity for the students, getting them through the supply chain, as we've talked about USG being a potential part with our educational ecosystem partners, beginning to help solve some of the enrollment challenges, but also then on the other end being critical on the workforce end, and that the investments both strengthens the educational ecosystem, but also the workforce development well-being. And so I think that's the reason to start here. And it's just a different way of approaching, recognizing that our ask is going to grow. This strategic plan does not move forward without resources. And how do we continue beyond just what we know and what our students can say to really make the case? So thank you to Michael and Bob for helping lead the next step in that work. Jorge?
Thank you. Michael, thank you. The question that I have is whether in this view you have examined, or the school has examined, what states are implementing kind of best practices in regional centers kind of to make it sustainable, so that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but what practices can we borrow from other locations? Are we, if we can look to some of those practices, then we can shorten that learning curve. And if we don't find much, and I've been doing a little bit of a search in the Department of Education databases, I don't see a lot. So there may be some opportunities for grant funding to advance this concept. That is just the one bit of information. I looked at North Dakota, which I think cost of living is a little bit lower there than here. The room and board is about 39% of the education cost for the university, for the North Dakota university system. So if we can build a little bit more of a database, that if you've looked at things in those regards, kind of from the student perspective and from the system perspective, there may be opportunities. And I don't know what has been done in the past.
So that's a very good question. We appreciate your question. And yeah, that was actually discussed in our committee. Our resource consultant that we have for the return on investment study includes a gentleman who's done many of these in the past, and will certainly look for or try and pull from things that have worked in the past. That was also part of our early findings into the USG 2.0 program as well. So we definitely would like to replicate anything we have. We have some state examples in Southern Maryland, but we definitely are going to continue to look for what works for us. And if you have any resources that you think would be helpful from your research, including other areas, please don't hesitate to pass those on to Ann Kadamian and Shirley Bramman, please.
Thank you.
Ann Kadamian, did you want to jump in before I take the other questions?
No, I was just going to reference Shirley, and I've got something at the end that I'll kind of wrap some things together, but I was just going to mention what Mike just said, which was that Rick Stasloff, who is serving as our consultant on this, has broad experience in the state of Maryland and in other higher education systems, and is bringing in a lot of these examples and reference points that Jorge has asked about. So I just wanted to make that point, but I'll come back later, Shirley, at the end with everything. Thank you.
Will do. Teresa, you had your hand up. You need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the ambassadors are fabulous because I still have, their phone numbers of the kids that were ambassadors, and I invite them to come to the talks that I give to the students here, and they are great. And there's nothing like that, they tell the kids how the universities, how they work and the opportunities and everything. I just love the ambassadors.
Thank you. Yeah, support in every direction makes a huge difference. Joanne?
Thank you. Having worked pretty closely with the chief academic officers for most of the systems around the country, I can tell you that the USM model of regional centers is unique. There are many other systems that have regional campuses that work, and Rick Stasloff is exactly the right person to be diving into some of this. We worked with Rick on several different projects, but there's a reason that every other system is not doing this. It's hard, it's new, it's difficult, it's complicated. But I can tell you that many of the other systems are looking at us and to us to try and figure this out, because the idea of having multiple institutions providing degree programs in a place of high need is really interesting and attractive to a lot of especially highly populated places. So the fact that we're stumbling along is not surprising at all, since we're way out in front on this.
Exactly. And as Fernanda called out in the chat, we are here to accomplish transformative change. It's hard, but we will lead the way. Yeah, no, I think, again, the vision of how to move forward to really make the case, I think is important, because we are trying to do things very differently and make it sustainable in a way that we hope others will replicate in the future. But there's a lot of different thinking that has to go in. Michael Pretty?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, in our study, 70% of students that are coming through higher education are non-traditional students, including the student that went through my information interview. She's pursuing a degree, and she's got a 17 and 19-year-old family that are also in school. So it's the complication is not just the traditional students we have, but how do we reach students that may have needs to receive higher education, and that is definitely a different mix than what we've been looking at in the past.
Right. And Academian statistic that 74% of our students are non-traditional, and as Fernanda notes, non-traditional is the new traditional, and that's where we are really keeping our, again, if we had to sort of cull out the things that are critical in the new USG plan that we as a board are going to support, it is really laser focused on the student, Okay, Steve Simon, if we can come back to the next slide, would be the Next Gen Committee. See if we can pull that up. And otherwise, I will just be sharing from my notes. Thank you. Totally appreciate that. So when the Board of Advisors developed our strategic plan, we recognized that supporting the development of USG's research capacity to foster local economic growth through the generation of intellectual capital was an aspirational goal. As we look at how the Next Gen Committee might support the USG strategic plan, it isn't moving away from that, but maybe participating more actively in the innovation and academic planning to capture some of those research and innovation hub ideas. And also the data analytics. We talked about the data evidence for pathways and planning, really building our understanding and ability to connect people to why this is so important and show how it works. So looking at what the new plan might ask the board to stand up to do is to help foster that shift in culture that establishes USG as an academic hub of innovation and support the development of data analytics as the heartbeat of Montgomery County's educational ecosystem for innovating pathways. On the flywheel, this committee can help to innovate academic planning and research, to design, build, and grow scalable, sustainable, student-centered pathways for the region's lifelong learners. So again, thinking about this committee was always set up with that future focus, research being a piece of it, but also now really understanding how we need to think differently if we're going to draw connections to be the hub of innovation. So Steve, if we can take this down, I'm going to see if Eric Lynn can share some thoughts about the Next Gen Committee and our next steps.
Okay, thanks so much, Shirley. Can you hear me just to check?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. It's been really a lot of fun to see the development of USG 2.0 and with Dusty Rude and the conversation with Shirley. What we were thinking about was to build, of course, like all the other committees, to build on supporting USG 2.0. One direction we were thinking about is to look and explore additional technology or innovation areas that could complement the planned build out in the life sciences pathways and ecosystem. It was already a lot to just pull the pieces together in the life sciences that are in the community. And there's so much active work trying to link them together. We know that's a big lift already, and it's not and we want to support that as best we can as well. But as a committee, the idea is to use the convening power to be a partner into initiating conversation, brainstorming, exploration opportunities for USG in the community that are forward-looking, but still adjacent to the life sciences, for example. And so following tradition, the idea is to have an invited panel to set up a discussion. We're aiming for the April timeframe. And to initiate conversation and to explore an area. So one of the areas that we're thinking about is cybersecurity, data analytics, or the broader IT ecosystem. And there's certainly a lot of demand for people with those skills in these technology areas. What kind of training, what kind of content, what programs could guide and build pathways for USG students that lead to contributions to this innovation ecosystem that we'd like to see. There are components that are close by that I think that makes this an attractive topic to explore. Certainly, there are existing cybersecurity programs at USG from UMBC, UMB, UMGC, as well as a lot of IT and computational degree programs. For myself, in NIST, we have the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence just not even a half mile down the road. It is a public-private partnership with companies. It's run by MITRE as an FFRDC, which is a federally funded research and development center. And when it was launched with a lot of fanfare from Montgomery County and from the state. So Barbara Mikulski was one of the key VIPs on the ribbon cutting of this National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. Since that time, cybersecurity has only increased in importance. It's ubiquitous in all economic sectors. There's an extreme shortage of trained workforce. I think just one example of the growth of cybersecurity at UMBC is an illustrative example of how important this area is. And at NIST, we know that by developing cybersecurity frameworks for a number of different topics, we're seeing just immense demand in areas like supply chain, Internet of Things, finance, AI, et cetera. Most interestingly, one of the most important areas of cybersecurity is that of biological data, genomic data, personalized medicine, and how to secure it is an area of intense focus nationally, and built into the strengths that are being built in the life sciences sector and the ecosystem now. So anyway, I hope that's enough to say there's an interesting conversation in there for what pathways could be already exist and what could be possible. We're just at the beginning stages, so if you have suggestions or ideas for Dusty or myself, then please just reach out for either panelists or topics or questions that you'd like to to have conversation around. Okay, back to you, Shirley.
Thanks, Eric. I do want to just share with folks as the committee is thinking about how, again, we, the Board of Advisors, can take advantage of our connections, right? Thinking about data analytics, which are here in the region, and Dusty has some connections to, thinking about cybersecurity, which, as Eric points out, is here in the region. And also we're aware that Montgomery College just received additional designation and funding in the cybersecurity space in an applied way, but that's going to be the challenge for us to think about how we build a pathway for students who are getting applied opportunities at Montgomery College and then want to continue to complete their degrees. So the conversation about bringing together people in industry who are here, who would have an interest in the economic well-being of our region, to talk to each other and think about the overlap of the skill sets, the overlap of the both content-based, but also problem-solving skills, experiential opportunities, and then for us as a board to help channel that information into how we shape the future is exactly the kind of committee work that I think helps to make this strategic plan real down the road and not just a document. So I wanted to thank Eric and Dusty for some innovative thinking. It's an effort. It's a first conversation. We don't know where it'll go, but it is exactly the way in which I think we as board members can try and show up to move things farther along. And Kadimian, I'm going to let you jump in.
Yeah, I just want to add on to the great idea, and Shirley, to your great comments, that this is a way to start thinking not micro, but at a kind of piloted level about the intersection between deep employer engagement and academic planning. You know, this is where employer engagement is going to matter a lot. There's typically a divide here between employers and the academic planning, just for historical, institutional reasons. And this is an example of how you can start to bring employer engagement in a really thoughtful way into thinking about the future of academic planning and all of this. So it's fantastic, and it's exactly the kind of challenge we have with employer engagement. I think we'll learn a lot from this. I also just want to give a shout out to the Next Gen Committee, who really put us on the path to a partnership with IBBR. We continue to articulate this partnership, and in fact, our hope is to launch the first a pilot that includes a mentoring component and some experiential learning research component with our life science programs in IBBR in the fall. So I just wanted to say that continues to percolate along, thanks to the great work by the Next Gen Committee to queue up that partnership between NIST, IBBR, USG, and all of our partners as well. So thanks to that committee.
Michael Purdy.
Just really a quick note on the employer emphasis. There's, as most people are following, there's a huge need for employees if you're an employer. And one of the things that I know some of the smarter institutions that work with University of Shady Grove is they transfer some of their training costs to the degree program through the curriculum. And they also get first dibs at any of those students. And there's a real connection between trying to work with some of the human resource development in local companies, including some large ones here, to focus on how they can manage that pipeline of students. So I just wanted to bring that up, and there's the timing for connecting to career development is really, really appropriate.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Good point. I mean, that's an important reminder, insight, that one reason that industry would want to play with USG is that they really can then help ensure that some of the skill development, some of the training that they're looking for can be incorporated into the students' experiences. Any other comments? Steve Simon, last but not least, our board engagement committee. So the board engagement committee, while not specifically is in our organizational chart in our strategic plan, but we have always thought about the committee as just responsible for not just, but this is critical for who's here to do the work, but recruiting, onboarding, and supporting our board of advisor members. As we look down the road in terms of forward focus, we need to make a commitment that we ensure that our board of advisors has the dynamic breadth of experience, capacity, network connections, and commitment to help USG achieve what Anne referred to as the promise, which was part of our USG strategic imperative. As we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion all throughout the system, we obviously are committed both within our own ranks to thinking about that, but also really thinking about if we as the board are going to help be the connectors to implement this plan, do we have the full scope, the full cross-sector representation to be able to bring experiences, capacity, network connections? So our role going forward will be to recruit a diverse and inclusive board representing a cross-section of the community and to support members to be these proactive connectors. We've also talked about, and I want to thank the Board Engagement Committee for working on this, we've also started to engage non-board members in our committee work as a way to build awareness, as a way to build capacity, and frankly, as an effective recruitment strategy. And when we look at the flywheel and think about how does it matter who we help to recruit onto the board, because if we're going to create an equitable, diverse, and inclusive educational workplace experience for the future student, employee, and partner, the board is going to be a critical partner in that work. Thank you, Steve Simon. We're done with our slides. So with that, I'm going to invite Larry Walker to share some feedback from the Board Engagement Committee.
Great. Thank you. Can everyone hear me, I hope?
Yes.
A couple of things that I think are important to recognize. We've been dealing with COVID. We started off early, seeing the need, and I'll repeat this a little bit. We've talked about this in some prior meetings, that we needed to have the opportunity to expand the numbers on our boards. Mary led very effectively with you, with all of us, a bylaw change which allowed expansion of the board. And we don't want to expand just for expand purposes. We wanted, and we've discussed this all as a group within the committee and the support of Anne and Shirley, but Belinda and I have focused very hard on being deliberate about, what do we want and who we want and who comes on that makes us better. And as our strategic plan has developed, we want to make sure we're supporting leadership. We want to make sure we're supporting Anne and their vision. We want to make sure we're supporting each other. But at the end of the day, it's all about the students and making sure that we are bringing on people and having people. It's a kind of a big picture there, but we want to make sure we're adding so that we can carry out our mission. And we've tried to be very deliberate about focusing on industries, on demographics, on a variety of support that we believe that'll make us better. And we've listened to the other committees and really trying to figure out which would be good. I'm doing another outreach to each of you right now to indicate that if you believe you have people that could get excited, that could be ambassadors, can be supportive, can be just part of our future and could fit in, to please let Mary, Ann, Belinda, myself know, because we'd like the opportunity to talk to them. That being said, what we've wanted to do, and again with COVID, because we're proud of what we have, is to set up some small sessions with individuals that are targeted. We wanted to do it on campus because we believe there's a lot to be proud of there. We may end up doing it virtual, but we've identified people who we believe, number one, we'd like to hear from them on their vision of us. We may learn something there. And we'd like to get input from a variety of people in the community, from industry leaders. But number two, we look at them kind of subtly as Shirley mentioned earlier, as potential committee members to learn more about us, and candidly, future board members as we move forward. So we're going to commit to start that, even if we have to do it virtually. We've identified some individuals so far, but again, I would welcome input from each of you. Each of you have different, backgrounds, industry connections. You know who we are now. You've heard very clearly, where we're going, we'd like to go. So Shirley, with that, I think our goal is to continue the work we're doing and add people and onboard people that make us as good or better than we are now. And I'd welcome questions and or input.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you to you and Belinda for your leadership. Any questions or comments for the Board Engagement Committee co-chairs? Larry, I want you to know I've already had a couple of messages in the chat of people thinking of new members, so we'll certainly pass that along.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
So I'm gonna, before I bring Ann back in, I just wanted to share with you the commitments that we as a board made and the work that we outlined for ourselves still remains very relevant to the USG 2.0, but the clarity and the sharpness of focus on the student, on career readiness, on how we help to initiate and build the experiences, whether that's through our participation in the career consultant, whether it's direct connections to our places of work, whether it's sponsoring internships as employers, helping to fund internships as philanthropists, or actually bringing in other industry into the USG network through our work as connectors. There is much that we can do to really help prepare our students to have those experiences while they're with us and then leave us very competitive and hold ourselves accountable for really making that transition into their futures very viable and very productive. So we will continue to work on how we are actively engaged and maybe tapping us for some of the task force work. The committees are shaping a new focus to supplement all the work that we've done. And we're going to continue to need to engage each other in conversation and add to our ranks to be able to ensure that this strategic plan really takes on life and is not simply a plan that sits on the shelf. So I will pause there, and Anne, Kadimi and I promised that you could get back in before we move to the last item on our agenda.
Thank you, Shirley. I won't take long. I just want to weigh in on, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm always just blown away by our board, and the dedication and the focus that everyone is bringing instantly to this plan is amazing. And everything everyone has done to create this plan as well. What stands out for me in this conversation are some of the comments Kevin and others have raised about, this is hard. This is going to be really hard. We're talking systemic change. We're talking lots of moving pieces, lots of relationships, resource commitments. You know, it is a big major shift. And I think the chancellor himself has talked about, you know, how hard it is for institutions to change as well. But I want to just lift up that, you know, I came here because I believe that this can be done. And it is going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time, but we are pursuing this within the plan across a number of different areas. One is very strategic, and, you know, working with the board officers, working with Ike. You know, Ike sits in this amazing position of being on our board, but serving as a board of regents, knowing Montgomery County so well, knowing the state so well, and just helping us to constantly navigate across these different layers. PJ helping us to navigate across these layers, the board officers every single Monday morning thinking holistically about where we're going and what we're doing. So there's constant effort to think across all of these different systems. We're going to take action to do it. We're going to try things. We're going to move forward. I'm sure we'll goof up. I'm sure we'll make some mistakes, but we're going to continue to try things. We're going to jump in and do things and get the momentum going and learning from those things as well. And we're also going to really focus on communicating the plan and communicating what we need to do. I think this is a huge part of the work ahead, is how we communicate the work and what we want to accomplish and the value add for it as well. Tying all this into a knot, I didn't mention earlier, but we have been talking, this is a brilliant idea that PJ has brought to us, and that helps put all of this together. This idea of Shady Grove with some type of a legislative designation at some point that distinguishes us in terms of an innovation hub or in terms of a place of creativity to help move some of this work forward. That could be very helpful, both in terms of resourcing, giving us the visibility and the partnership to move this forward. So Shirley, I just wanted to raise those things as a way to kind of tie together some of this conversation and highlight where I think all of these pieces can be moving together. So thank you for the extra time, Shirley.
No, of course. Totally appreciate that. Questions, comments? So the last, but certainly not least important item on our agenda, we have embraced as part of the vision. Oh, I'm sorry, PJ, jump in.
Oh, sorry. You'd think I'd be quicker at raising hands. I don't want to get too far into it, but this idea of putting in Maryland statute a designation of USG as this, and part of this might be copying some words from some other designations. I'm looking at, she'll always be Treasurer Kopp to me, so I'm looking at Treasurer Kopp, and she remembers when University of Maryland College Park was designated in statute as the state's flagship public research university. Morgan State University is designated as the state's urban research university. University of Maryland UMGC is designated as, and this is back when they were kind of the only one doing online education, but I'm not saying every institution should have a designation, but USG is unique, as has been discussed this morning. It's unique in the state. It's unique in the world, and putting in statute a designation for that USG is the state's flagship regional higher education center. We need to work on the wording. The purpose would be to have that in statute. So, and I don't mean to say this in a morbid way, when we're all gone, okay, when the next generation, the next generation of chancellor, of senior vice chancellor for academic affairs. I mean, we have great support from Joanne Baughman, from Jay Perman, but there are going to be other people down the road, eventually, and it will enshrine that the state needs to support USG as the state's flagship regional higher education center. So that's the thinking.
Thanks, PJ. I think that is helpful, and I'll just piggyback a little bit because, as we've talked about the vision and the heavy lift of system change, moving away from thinking about just attracting single degree programs and thinking about a pathway, wanting to be able to experiment with doing different kinds of entrepreneurship work. All of it is going to take some relaxing of the rules that make it very hard to do creative kind of partnership, right? The rules are set up to have institutions compete and think about single degrees. And as we move away from that, as we try to get into a space where there's collaboration on real pathways to allow students to explore their interests and their skills and have lots of different experiences that allow them to shape their future, we're going to need some latitude. And that's the hope, that the designation also brings with it the opportunity to lift some rules, even for the beginning, just to be able to do something differently than we've done it before. So thank you to PJ for the thinking. This is obviously something we're going to continue to bring back to the board. As Fernanda notes, a new paradigm always breaks the previous one or the rules. And so looking to how we create some space to be able to really do that. I will share with you, I think this is one of the most exciting times to be on the USG board. So I feel fortunate. I'm thrilled to have all of you along on this ride, and we'll be lucky to bring other people with us. So very much appreciate that. And that will be, when we think about the big ask for next year, it will not just be the fiscal model that we need to sustain us, but really thinking differently about how we create the opportunity for innovation. I'm aware that we're at the 10 o'clock witching hour. So even though I know our meeting goes till 10:30, I know that my screen is going to start to get smaller. Those of you who are leaving, please know that I will follow up with you. So you may not be here in the moment, but we will need your support and energy for our Thought Leadership Symposium. If you take nothing else before you jump off, mark June 24th, 2022 on your calendar, because that is the date for the first ever Board of Advisors hosted. We have been calling it the Thought Leadership Symposium, but we're actually leaning into the Action Leadership Symposium because we don't want anyone to think that they're being invited just to a conversation that goes nowhere, but to a conversation that actually results in some action for us to take. I believe we shared with you, but we are now really clear that the focus of this symposium will be on how we support and attract students of color and women into the STEM professions. Again, really thinking about our commitment to this next step for our students of stepping into their careers. We are playing with the title, so I'm not sure that I have the definitive word for you yet, but we were thinking about new voices, new leaders, uplifting homegrown talent for our future scientific workforce. So stay tuned on that. If you have not already heard, the exciting news is that we have a commitment from our keynote speaker, Dr. Kafue Deziraza, who is currently a professor at Duke, but who is himself a graduate of the UMBC program, went to high school in Montgomery County, so an NCPS graduate, and who is deeply committed to mentoring future scientists, but also science leaders in the field. And he is going to be able to kick us off and will focus not only on making the case for why everyone should care beyond a moral imperative about having more diversity in our future scientists and leaders, but because of the economic imperative for it, that we will simply not be ready to meet the scientific challenges of the future if we ignore this demographic community that has incredible potential, but has often faced barriers. But he'll also talk about the fact that we not only need to graduate the scientists from USG and our partner programs, but we also need to support the new leaders who are going to then create hospitable, supportive, inclusive work environments so that those scientists can thrive and can innovate and can take us into the future. So he's going to lead us off. We're then going to have two panels, very open to your thoughts and ideas about who might be good panelists. One that will look at some of the equity stumbling blocks, but also the opportunities for how the economic path becomes more accessible. And that's everything from better engaging scientists to inspire our students early on to the point we talked about earlier in terms of confidence, to even see themselves as potential scientists of the future and encourage them to think about it and then create pathways that build on and support their strengths and possibly even teach differently, and how we engage the existing science community in terms of creating and supporting new leadership and thinking about that connection between the academic path and the industry path. And we will wrap it up with we're going to invite some of our local and system Nobel laureates to comment on the ideas that came out, because we're going to end the symposium with some action steps, things that people can do, including as a first step, joining us as career consultants, joining us as career consultants for USG, because everyone in the community can be available to do that, but also then building on more active steps that we can take as we think about growing the career readiness and partnerships for our students. So we're really thinking both about our commitment to be student-centered and to create the pathway so that we don't drop off and students don't feel that they don't have what it takes to come through to completion of the learning that it takes to enter into the world of STEM, but also thinking about how we really generate hand in hand with the STEM industry, the experiences, the support, the opportunities so that students are ready and competitive stepping out into the world, and that we support them not just to do their work, but to think about how we get them ready for leadership opportunities in STEM. I'm going to pause because I've got a few of the ad hoc committee members. Roya, who is our very able ad hoc committee chair, is not here today. So I'm hoping to do well in representing her. But Kevin, Fernanda, if either of you would like to jump in, I'm going to pause before we open up for any reactions, comments, or questions.
Well, I don't know that I could add anything to what you just said. That was magnificent. I was very excited. It's very exciting to hear you talk about it. We've been in the meetings and you're kind of deep into it, but that was as great an explanation of what we're going to try to accomplish as I could have imagined. So thank you.
Great teamwork. Fernanda or Don, anything to add?
No, I would just add, so I totally echo what Kevin said, and I think that our real goal is to create a thought leadership event that is it creates anticipation in the community, and after our first impression, which has to be really, really shocking and rocking the boat really, really seriously, after that we should have our thought leadership symposium as one of the activities in the region to make sure you're part of, and that's our very ambitious goal.
And think about the paradigm shift that you spoke about earlier, is that we really are thinking about it from an action perspective. We do an awful lot of thinking. We really do need to put the things into action and encouraging them in this particular environment and setting. So let us be the innovator there.
Setting the example. Don?
Yeah, just to jump in, just to say ditto, 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 ditto. And on your first point and Kevin's last point, I think one of the really interesting and important challenges, I think, will be for all of us collectively to think of how each attendee can convert the time in the symposium into their own action. And so something that's easy or hard that essentially the attendees can adjust to their own interest, motivation, and ability. So ranging from what you said to just provide an hour of career counseling to something big, So I think it would be really great and important brainstorming to come up with a whole set of possible, potential tasks and asks and action plans that each attendee can take away after the conference. So just ditto this major emphasis on starting by thinking but ending in action for the symposium.
The only thing that I wanted to add that I forgot is a big, big, big shout out to Roya, who is doing a phenomenal job trying to keep us on task. I mean, she's just amazing.
She's the right woman for this work. So we will be, Anne is writing in the chat that the annual conference will eventually be our own USG version of South by Southwest, focused on educational equity and educational transformation. I love that. And it is really important. We've said it once, but we'll say it again. We are not inviting people in to focus on USG. This is USG really stepping into the work that we have embraced in this plan, which is really thinking about how to strengthen the educational ecosystem to create more opportunity, to entice that future talent, to stick with it all the way through, but also really to connect to the contribution, what the workforce and needs of our county, region, and state are, that we are simply not going to thrive unless and until we have a robust, diverse, inspirational STEM community, and having the scientists and the leaders to do that. So this really does put us, it is really us facilitating the work that we see where USG really sits in that space, not to focus inward, but to support all of that work. We are going to come back to you as Board of Advisors, so you can start thinking now about who will you personally invite to be in the audience, because people will come because you ask them. Who would be interested and interesting for this work? Who do you think might be interesting to be part of our panel and part of the symposium in some way? We are collecting ideas, and it is certainly not too late. And then to help us think through, as you see from your perspectives, what some of these action steps might be. Where do we really want to plug people in to generate and to support the growth and well-being and innovation in our county, region, and state? So those are the ways in which we're going to tap into you as our next step as things begin to gel. But most importantly, save the date. Our save the date will go out soon, June 24th. And I should share with you, in case we didn't say, this is an interesting moment also in terms of just the community conversation, because it turns out, and Marty Rosedale had to jump off, but the Tech Council is doing its own summit around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they will point to the USG symposium. They are going to go earlier. Kid Museum locally in Montgomery County that has an equity focus and tries to make sure to prepare the non-traditional and underserved students with opportunities as makers so they can see themselves as scientists. They are having a community conversation around inspiring K-12 students into STEM, and their keynote speaker is Dr. Ebony McGee, who will look at attracting more students of color into the STEM field. Their conversation is in April, and they will point to the USG conversation coming up in June. And then we will really be the culminating opportunity to really deepen and push the community forward on this. So I think that that also really works in terms of how we establish ourselves there. So we're excited, and we're going to infect you with our enthusiasm as we go along. Any last questions or comments? Well, I thank you all for participating. You know, it is a moment of transformation, and I think all of us seeing ourselves as having a role in that and continuing to connect through the committees. Feel free to reach out to me or directly if you have anything that you would like to add. We are going to make great leaps and change as we move forward in the next months. I do have as an aspiration that at our next board meeting on April 20th, we will be in the same room and we'll build off each other's energy, hopefully, to move forward. So as you see that date on your calendar, think about the travel time to get back to USG where we can be together. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Academia, any final words before we thank everyone and set them on their way?
No, thank you so much, Shirley. And thank you, everybody.
Terrific. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and expect us to reach out to engage you in the work. Bye-bye.